What's going on, everyone? So I wanted to take the time today to answer some questions that I've been getting about muscle hypertrophy and how that can fit into a strength training or even an Olympic weightlifting program, or just an overall blueprint from maybe getting from point A to where you're at now to landing on stage, hitting PRs, staying healthy, continuing to progress year after year. So I'm actually going to share two stories with you that are not about me, that are about some lifters that I've had on our LLYL program, which is a program that I've been doing now for a couple years, putting out there. I've had a couple editions. You can check those out down below. There's a 15-week and a 20-week. And basically what I like to do with these is I like to work with beginners, but also national level lifters, and we kind of put them through a very similar program. What I've been noticing is that, you know, a good, solid, robust foundation is built through a lot of hypertrophy work, so a lot of bodybuilding-esque things. We have some great improvements that come out of there, like body composition that gets better. So obviously in Olympic weightlifting or any strength sport, we want to be nice and lean. But then also we can really work on improving positions, bringing up weak muscles, and just starting to build the resiliency to be able to train harder in strength blocks, competition cycles, and all of that. So the first story is actually a very common one I get from my social media, where people come into me and they're asking, you know, how do I'm training in the gym, I have these performance goals, but I'm still struggling because I want to look a certain way. And, you know, that was kind of the foundation of why I built Look Like You Lift, other than obviously just, you know, a play with words, is that we all train, and the real reality is, while we're never going to be like professional athletes, we obviously want to be able to push ourselves to our best. And a part of that too is, as we get going with our training, is most people at least want to have a certain physique. They want to look good. They want to feel good. For whatever that might mean to them, they're doing that, you know, and maybe it's not the forefront goal, but it's definitely a goal. So that was one thing. I get a lot of beginners coming in, people that ask, you know, how can I add, you know, a little bit of bodybuilding, hypertrophy, aesthetic work into my existing training for Olympic weightlifting or my, you know, powerlifting, whatever that might be. And it really isn't that hard, right? You just got to make sure that you're adding in accessory work. You got to make sure that your accessory work is planned out in a way that, you know, if you want to get bigger legs, squatting 5x5 is not going to do it, right? Or doing, you know, 3 days of squats where you're doing heavy singles and doubles, like my Look Like You Live program, that's not going to cut it when you're looking for muscle hypertrophy. Now, we might need to do that in certain strength phases or even pre-competition phases. But in the off season, we really should be working on building a ton of muscle growth, a ton of muscle volume, and getting that in there. And that really is the benefit of doing like a hypertrophy or bodybuilding program in the off season, where you're not so keyed in on, you know, how much you're squatting, but rather keyed in on improving positions, improving muscle activation, and all that stuff. And that can be anywhere from a 6-week block, 8-week block, to a 12-week block. And it can transition beautifully into a strength-focused phase where we drop a little bit of the variations. We get a little more to the specific movements. So instead of doing, you know, leg pressing and lunging and, you know, unilateral work and different back squat and front squat variations, if you're a weightlifter in that strength block, we kind of take you away from that. We get you back to the big lifts of maybe the front squat, back squat, maybe a lunge. And then we go into a comp cycle where it's basically front squat, back squat, or maybe even some of my lifters, we back out. And that's, so I had a beginner come to me, and they were just, you know, the normal. They came from CrossFit. They were looking to gain strength and size, and they were struggling after a couple years to do that. So what we did was they ended up coming, and, you know, we worked with Olympic weightlifting technique, and during this we were really working with, you know, 1 to 2 lifts a day max, maybe only spending about 15-20 minutes of the whole, you know, 75 to 90 minute sessions working with Olympic weightlifting. Really, we were just working on improving speed qualities, keeping power up, and just a bunch of variations to address different mechanics of it. We weren't totally concerned with how heavy we were going, because we were doing volume and setting the stage for later. So we were working on that, you know, 4 to 6 sets of 2 to 3 reps in that like 70% range. So nothing over 80%. What it allowed us to do is allow us to stay fast, get our timing, get our speed, all of that. What we then went on to do was that we went and we added some big compound movements. We trained in that 5 to 10 rep range for a lot of our squats or pulls, slow eccentrics, good positions, full range of motions, more of a traditional bodybuilding sense. And that was really a good way, because these athletes came and they were so used to just pushing heavy loads or, you know, using their bounce, which is great, but they really weren't great with like muscle activation. So they'd come in with knee injuries. They would come in with just like nagging, ailing pains, or they'd be able to get through things because they like central nervous system, they could just ramp up, but then they would always kind of get stalled out because they never actually taught their body how to promote force, how to be able to recruit more muscle fibers, and to be able to do it over and over so that they're, make sure they're not getting injured. So that was kind of what their first experience with Look Like You Lift was. The added benefit was that, they were able to come in, they not only gained muscle mass, because they were a beginner, they also did get stronger. But what's really cool is it allowed them to understand how to move properly, being able to engage certain parts of their back and their shoulders so that when it came time to, get nitty gritty with technique, they had much more finite control of their movement. So I think that's a huge kind of step one reason why I think beginners can benefit from something like this. Another reason is that, if they're coming from a sport background or a CrossFit background or whatever it may be, or even just Olympic weightlifting background, you're missing a whole gap of training, especially in the beginning phases, where you're just putting in grunt work, you're just putting in good solid work, building muscle hypertrophy, building the volume in, and that's something that will come, in shape. Now, weightlifting in shape doesn't mean you go run a half marathon. It means being able to sustain high intensities, express high intensities, and higher volumes over and over, because the more you can train, the more you can recover from, the more training you can get. Obviously, that's why you'll be able to progress quicker than, say, somebody who does 3 days a week who can't recover. You're going to be able to do 6-7 days a week, and it's something you love, and there's just a benefit to do that. So I think that that individual did really, really well with the program, and they were able to find that when they got to the next strength block, they weren't getting winded. They were able to recover because their muscle adaptations evolved, and that they could, handle the more stress. So by the time we backed off on stress, it allowed their body to really push down on intensity, meaning how much they're lifting. So that was that, and that's why I think beginners can benefit from a program, a hypertrophy-based program like the Look Like You Lift program in the links below, or any really good program that, is systematic in how they progress to hypertrophy, making sure they're tracking the overall training volumes, because it can get sticky when you're talking about Olympic weightlifting where we're squatting every day in terms of the lifts, but then how do you also make sure you're not just adding too much on there that you get beat up and fatigued. So then the next person here, really two of them, and these are some of my national level athletes, and we run these guys through it. So the first one, Matt, he's been with training me forever. We've done now about 3 or 4 off-season cycles like this, so I guess about 3 or 4 months of Look Like You Lift training, which is really hypertrophy and weightlifting combined. Starts us kind of in a similar thing. We're doing much more bodybuilding, no focus on how heavy we're lifting. It's all about giving him some range, staying below 80%, just putting on mass and size. It's a great way for that type of lifter who's came out of a national level prepping, national level meet, to be able to get back and enjoy training. And I think that's a big thing. The older you are in the sport, meaning how long you've been doing it, the higher level you get, it's very easy to get burnt out. And I think that, at that level, there's nothing wrong with getting in there, putting on some muscle mass, putting on some size, getting away from just the stress of having to lift X amount of weight on the bar, and just enjoying training again. And I think from a physiological standpoint, as a lifter progresses, we want to make sure that we're gaining the right amount of weight. So as lifters get older, they typically will go up in higher in weight classes because they've been training longer, they've been gaining more mass. And that's something that if we are going to be putting on weight, we want to make sure we're gaining lean muscle tissue. So that's a great way for hypertrophy and bodybuilding program to come in here. It also allows them to eat a little more in the off season and be able to recover, be able to take all that horsepower, if you will, from a car. We're just dropping a bigger engine into the frame that then we can optimize later in strength programs. So that's really a big thing. Also, after a heavy, prep session or comp cycle, we're really focusing on like the neural adaptations that happen and to be able to express that strength. But afterwards, we want to make sure that we drop that intensity down in terms of how much they're lifting. We let their connective tissues recover a little bit. Muscles can start to kind of engage a little more, and the nervous system and adrenals can kind of come down because we can't stay elevated the whole time because they are more advanced athletes, and overtraining is a little more serious. So I find that hypertrophy training, specifically like when we're combining isolation work, machine work, we're able to just drive the muscle fatigue, really get that muscle hypertrophy, all great things that can set this foundation for the future in terms of the strength block. Another great thing that I like about that is that it allows us to rework positions, right? So if somebody, for example, in this in here, we're throwing in some flexion-based rows. So basically, they're in spinal flexion, they come out, they go to extension. It's a great way to not only build a stronger back, but also really strengthen positions necessary. So, it's intensive, it's muscle hypertrophy work, and we can build that in with other forms of bodybuilding style movements, so he can start to feel the positions out. And then as we progress through, we can work technique still in that period, but we're not so hyper focused. He was asking me how much he should squat when we're doing 8s for back squats, and I said, I want 3-second eccentrics. Really should be nothing over 80%, but I don't want him to focus so much on how heavy he's going every session. I want him to focus on getting that muscle soreness and being able to say, yep, I got it. And whether that means he used 71%, 68%, or 75%, it doesn't really matter in the whole short scheme of things, because we're not training for maximal strength right now. So that's a really cool way to be able to use this type of programming with that type of athlete. Another one that we had here, Trezin was also placed third at, I think he had a snatch of 125 kilo and 165 clean and jerk, third in his weight class at the 2021 National Championships for under 25. And he actually found me through the Look Like You Live program. We happened to live about a half hour apart, so when he was prepping for the meet, he came out to me, and we ended up doing some stuff in person. And he really attributes, and as do I, his ability to be able to throttle down hard in the comp cycle, because a peaking schedule at that level, we're squatting multiple days a week. We really pull out a lot of that accessory work that thankfully we were able to do it. We're able to build up muscle. We're able to build up, kind of get rid of the asymmetries through the bodybuilding cycles prior. And then we go into basically a one-dimensional approach for weightlifting, which is so specific, but because we're maxing out snatches and cleans a lot, we're hitting heavy back squats and pulls, there's not a lot of energy and not a lot of recovery left for things like shoulder training, training the hamstring specifically, increasing quad strength and activation. So because we were able to put that hard work of the 8 to 12 weeks of like a serious hypertrophy bodybuilding, it allows us then to not worry about it so much, or at least extends our runway that we can push the body during those hard peaking cycles. And as I talked to previously, Matt actually peaked twice in a row. So he went through 2 peaking cycles, and that's not ideal, but he had to qualify for national championships. And then 6 weeks later, he had to peak again for national championships. So that's just a testament to his ability to handle that volume and to be able to withstand the hard training stress without getting injured. So I think that's important for most people when they're looking at their overall progress as an athlete, especially as they advance, is how are you spending your off seasons? Making sure that you're optimizing your body composition through eating and hard training. You're optimizing your training to allow you to be able to be in a position when it's time to buckle down and get after it, that you're not getting injured, and that you're able to you are able to afford the opportunity to pull yourself out of doing a lot of the accessories and really put all your effort into the lifts that count for your sport. So I hope this was helpful for you guys. This is, again, why I feel base programs are significantly, probably one of the most important things. Obviously peaking, this and that, but there's a lot of freedom you can have in a base program to make it fun for the lifter, get a lot of work done, and then set the stage, be able to throttle down, really push yourself during that strength block and during that comp cycle. But none of that can really be optimized unless you have foresight, 12, 15, 20 weeks out. And that's something that I've done here with Look Like You Live program. So I hope you guys, if you want to check that out below, you can. Go on there, comment below with any questions you have. But once again, hope you guys found that helpful. And yeah, stay tuned. We're going to have more videos on how to integrate this type of stuff within your workouts. If you follow me on social media, I got all those out there. But once again, hopefully see you guys on the app, and let's start training.